Ethan sat at his desk, intently focused on processing a new batch of test data. The work was tedious, the kind of monotonous task that stretched hours into what felt like an eternity. Yet, it was critical. This detailed analysis was the backbone of his team's latest efforts on the test car. Despite his lack of enthusiasm, Ethan's sense of duty kept him going. Each row of numbers and graphs was carefully organized, ready for further evaluation. The quiet hum of the office was interrupted by a sudden notification from his phone. Ethan glanced at the screen without much interest, noting only that it was a text message. The sender's name didn't pop out at him, so he dismissed it for the moment, returning his focus to his work. Minutes passed as he slogged through the data, but the unanswered message lingered in the back of his mind, a tiny distraction he couldn't completely shake off. When he finally hit a natural pause, he leaned back in his chair and reached for his phone. The message was from an unregistered number, though the area code was local. His first instinct was to dismiss it as spam. Unsolicited messages were nothing new, after all. Still, there was a chance it could be important, perhaps a team member who'd recently changed numbers. Deciding it was worth a quick look, he tapped the notification. What he saw made him freeze. The text included a photo, a sexually explicit image of a woman. Accompanying the picture was a cryptic message. Pay close attention. You still have time at Bradley's, 18. Ouch. Ethan blinked, trying to process what he was seeing. His initial reaction was to laugh it off. This had to be a mistake, some random wrong number or a phishing scam. But something about the photo tugged at him. It felt strangely familiar. He frowned, examining it more closely. That's when he saw it. A small mole on the woman's left leg. His stomach dropped. He knew that mole. It was a distinct, almost imperceptible mark he had seen countless times. It belonged to Sophia, his wife of 6 years. Ethan's mind raced, searching for an explanation. This couldn't be real. There had to be some mistake. Maybe the resemblance was just a coincidence. But the more he scrutinized the image, the more undeniable it became. It was her. The woman in the photo was Sophia. He reread the message, trying to piece together its meaning. Bradley's, 18. Bradley's was a local pub, a casual spot not far from his office. But as far as he knew, Sophia never went there. Why would someone send him a message about that place? And why now, when Sophia was supposed to be miles away? Sophia had flown out earlier that afternoon for a major work presentation in Boston. Her team had been preparing for weeks, and as one of the leaders, she was an essential part of the project. Her flight was scheduled to land at 4:30 p.m., and it was now 5:15. Normally, she would have texted him upon landing, a quick note to say she'd arrived safely. But today, there had been no word from her. Ethan debated what to do. Should he call her? Confront her? He hesitated, unsure of how to proceed. Instead, he decided to respond to the mysterious sender. Who is this, and where did you get this photo? Should I meet you at Bradley's? His fingers trembled slightly as he hit send. After sending the message, Ethan packed up his things and left the office. On the way to his car, he sent Sophia a casual text. How was the flight? Grabbing a bite? Call me when you can. He didn't want to seem suspicious, at least not until he had more information. As he started the car, his phone buzzed again. He hoped it was Sophia, but it was another message from the same unknown number. I'll be there, but I'm sure you'll find someone more interesting than me. Ethan's unease deepened. Whoever this was, they seemed to know far more than they should. The cryptic messages, the photo, it all felt too deliberate, like someone was playing with him. But he had no choice. He had to go to Bradley's and figure out what was going on. He opened his Maps app, set the route, and drove off, gripping the steering wheel tightly. On the way, his phone rang. This time, it was Sophia. She sounded cheerful but rushed as she explained that her team was in the middle of a hectic evening. I'll call you later, before bed. Love you, she added casually before hanging up. Ethan barely managed a response. Her words seemed normal enough, but something about the call felt off, almost too perfectly timed. Could she really be in Boston right now? Ethan arrived at Bradley's at 6:12 p.m. The pub's neon sign glowed against the evening sky, and the parking lot was packed with cars. Taking a deep breath, he stepped inside. The dimly lit space was unfamiliar to him, with a bustling dining area straight ahead and a long bar along the left wall. Unsure where to begin, he chose a seat at the far end of the bar, ordering a draft beer while quietly observing the room. And then he saw her. Sophia was seated at a table across the room, laughing with a sharply dressed man who handed her a drink. She looked stunning in a black dress and pearls, her hair styled perfectly. Her radiant smile and relaxed demeanor were a stark contrast to the turmoil brewing inside Ethan. The scene didn't make sense. Sophia was supposed to be in Boston, not here, not dressed like this, and certainly not sitting with another man. Ethan's stomach churned as he stood up, his mind screaming at him to stop, to think, to calm down. But he couldn't. Every step he took toward the table felt like it was happening in slow motion. Sophia's carefree laughter froze the moment she saw him. Her expression shifted from joy to panic as their eyes met. Ethan didn't hesitate. Reaching the table, he grabbed the man by the hair and yanked him backward with enough force to make him stumble. The man yelped, his drink spilling to the floor as he struggled to regain his footing. Ethan released him abruptly, clenching his fist, ready to strike. But the man scrambled away, falling to the floor before Ethan could land the punch. "Don't bother getting up, Liam," Ethan growled, his voice low and threatening. Liam, disheveled and soaked in spilled drinks, sat motionless on the floor, his face pale and his expression blank. He made no attempt to move or speak, silently acknowledging defeat. Ethan turned his attention back to Sophia, who remained seated at the table. The group around her, previously lively, had gone completely silent. Ethan's gaze moved from one face to the next, recognizing several of Sophia's team members, people who had often been guests in their home. The familiarity stung. How many of them knew about this? How many had condoned it? One thing was clear. Someone at this table had chosen to expose her. Whoever sent the message had decided to break ranks. Briefly, Ethan wondered who it was, but he dismissed the thought. It didn't matter. Knowing wouldn't change the betrayal he'd just uncovered. "I'm heading home," he said, his voice calm but resolute. Then, locking eyes with Sophia, he added, "If there's anything left to salvage in this marriage, you'll come home too. Now." Sophia hesitated, but eventually nodded. She began to rise, but Ethan stopped her with a raised hand. "Not yet. Give me a few minutes to leave first." Before walking away, he addressed the group. "Grace," he said, staring at the woman seated beside Michael Carter, "James thinks you're in Boston. And Michael, what about Emma? Does she think you're working late?" Their averted gazes and stiff postures were answer enough. His voice sharpened. "Does this whole team have something going on? Because that's sure what it looks like." Without waiting for a response, Ethan turned and left the pub. His drive home was a blur, his mind replaying everything he had seen. Somehow, he found himself parked in his driveway, unsure how he had gotten there. Inside, he went straight to the kitchen, grabbed a beer from the fridge, and dropped onto the living room couch. The scene at the table wouldn't leave his mind. He recognized Grace and Michael, but the other couples were unfamiliar to him. How deep did this go? Was Sophia part of some unspoken arrangement within her team? He debated whether to contact Michael or Emma but decided against it. Instead, he sent a simple, pointed message. "Just heard from Sophia. The team's travel plans seemed to change. Best call for updates." It was vague enough to avoid direct accusations, but clear enough to cause a stir. At least his conscience would be clear. About 20 minutes later, the sound of the garage door opening signaled Sophia's return. He remained seated, watching as she entered the living room. She was still wearing her little black dress, though she had removed her shoes and jewelry. Her face was composed, but Ethan could see the tension in her movements as she sat across from him. Ethan said nothing, letting the silence stretch. He believed silence was often more effective than words. It made people uneasy, forcing them to speak first. Sure enough, Sophia broke the silence within moments. "It's not what you think," she blurted out. Ethan raised a hand to stop her. "You don't know what I think about what I saw tonight," he replied coldly. "And I don't need a long explanation. We're both engineers. We know there's never just one answer to a problem. Why is just a way to justify poor decisions, so let's skip that. I want answers to something else. How long has this been going on? How many people know? How often have you made me a joke to our friends and colleagues? Sophia flushed. No, Ethan. It's not like that, she said quickly. Our travel plans changed last minute. Liam suggested we stay in town tonight and rest before flying out tomorrow. That's all. Ethan's expression darkened. I didn't see the entire team at Bradley's. Where were the others? Some decided to stay home an extra night and meet us at the airport tomorrow, she admitted, her voice quieter. But you didn't, Ethan said sharply. You chose to stay behind with Liam. From where I stood, you seemed pretty comfortable with him. Is there something between the star engineer and the prodigy program manager that I should know about? Sophia hesitated. Liam's fine. He even convinced Bradley's owners not to press charges against you, she said, as though that would appease him. Ethan's jaw tightened. I couldn't care less about Liam, he snapped. If that idiot hadn't stumbled, I'd have broken his nose. Let him press charges. I've been to jail before. It doesn't scare me. Sophia flinched, but managed to keep her composure. Do you want the truth? She said finally. Yes, I'm drawn to him. But he's not my boyfriend. Nothing happened tonight. I should have told you about the change in plans, but I didn't think it mattered. Whether I stayed here or went to Boston, you weren't expecting me. It didn't matter? Ethan repeated, his voice heavy with disbelief. You're still loyal to your team, but not to your husband? We just had dinner before heading to our rooms, Sophia said defensively. That's all. And then you showed up and humiliated me in front of everyone. Ethan leaned forward, his tone sharp. Humiliated you? You think you're the victim here? He reached for his phone, pulled up the explicit photo, and slid it across the table to her. Sophia's expression changed instantly as she recognized it. Denial was no longer an option. She opened her mouth to speak, but Ethan raised a hand again, stopping her. He activated the voice recording app on his phone, placed it in his pocket, and leaned back. Go ahead, Sophia. Explain. Sophia took a deep breath. Our team is close-knit, she began, her voice shaky. Bradley's hosted us because we've been carrying the weight of this proposal for weeks. I can't pinpoint when it started, but after Liam took over as the lead, we began working more closely. I didn't mean for it to happen, but it just did. It just happened? Ethan said with disdain. No, we both know that's not how this works. Nothing just happens. You made conscious choices, many of them. So spare me the excuses. Sophia fell silent, guilt etched across her face. For Ethan, the truth was painfully clear. So, 6 months, Ethan said, answering his own question. That's when Liam secured the contract, right? Sophia nodded silently. And the team, Ethan continued. All of you. Are you all involved? He stopped short of outright labeling the situation. She hesitated before nodding again. Yes. Liam believes it fosters trust and team cohesion. Ethan let out a bitter laugh. Team cohesion? Is that how he convinced everyone to join this company-wide affair? Now you're being disrespectful, Sophia snapped, her voice growing defensive. It's deeper than that. I feel connected to Liam and my team, more than ever. Her confidence swelled, and Ethan could see trouble brewing. Well, Ethan replied evenly, unfortunately, you're about to witness some personnel changes on your team. Sophia's face paled. What have you done? She gasped. Nothing they don't deserve. Sophia, I can't just stay silent. I've already sent messages to Michael and Emma. How they handle their spouses, and how their spouses handle them, is their business. My conscience is clear. Ethan, you're sabotaging the most productive team in Chromerica Incorporated history. Sophia almost shouted. You've benefited too. Just because we held team meetings on Wednesdays doesn't mean you missed out. I never excluded you. Benefited? Ethan's voice was sharp. While you were having team-building exercises, I was home, unaware. And now you're trying to paint me as the bad guy? That photo I showed you, how about we discuss that instead? You want to ruin everything because your ego is bruised? Sophia hissed, her anger rising. Do you know what we've accomplished together? Do you understand how much is at stake here? Ethan's pulse quickened as Sophia's tone shifted from anger to defiance. He had entertained the idea of forgiveness on the drive home from Bradley's, assuming it might have been a one-time mistake with Liam. But as she continued justifying herself, That thought withered away. We're stuck in Atlanta, Sophia said with a sharp edge. You will text Michael and Emma and tell them you heard from me. We're flying out tomorrow morning. That's the story Grace and James are sticking to, and you'll back it up. Understood? Her voice cracked with frustration. There's millions on the line, and your tantrum jeopardizes everything. Send the damn messages, and we'll talk about next steps. Ethan exploded. Next steps? There are no next steps. You, your team, and your leader Liam can continue your little circus without me. We're finished. I'll find a lawyer this week, and we'll settle things, clean and simple. 50-50 split. You keep your pension. I keep mine. Go. Head to Boston, claim your win, and leave me out of it. Ethan, please, Sophia pleaded, her tone softening. If we lose Grace or James before the presentation, the company could lose millions, for you and me. Think about the commissions and bonuses, Ethan. Hundreds of thousands, maybe more. Don't let this misunderstanding ruin everything we've built. Liam says I'm on track for CEO. Just a few more years, and we'll have it all. Don't you want that for us? Ethan stood, his expression unyielding. Leave. Before Sophia could respond, a blow struck Ethan's back, sending him sprawling to the floor. Winded, he felt a knee press into his back, pinning him down. Don't hurt him too much, Sophia said flatly, with an unsettling lack of urgency. Just enough. Ethan groaned, struggling to breathe as Liam's voice came from above. Your nose still in one piece, Ethan? That's a shame, Liam taunted. Grab his phone and send the texts. We don't have time for this nonsense. Hoisted roughly to his feet, Ethan caught his breath. The person lifting him wheezed with effort, revealing themselves to be a weak office type. Ethan took note of every detail. These weren't men built for conflict. They relied on bullying tactics and the weight of their positions. After being tossed aside, Ethan steadied himself, ready to fight back. But unlike Liam and his polished sales team, Ethan had worked with real professionals, men who operated in the field, not conference rooms. His mind flashed back to his time working with the 160th Sword Detachment from Fort Campbell, California. Ethan and his team weren't soldiers, but they developed critical equipment that allowed mission crews to enter and exit the most dangerous hotspots on Earth. Their work ensured success and, most importantly, the safe return of every operator. The soldiers of the 160th deeply appreciated the effort Ethan's team put into their craft. Among those warriors, one stood out, Staff Sergeant Noah Grant. A legend among his peers, Grant earned universal respect for his unwavering commitment to never leave anyone behind. He had seen action worldwide, and his name carried weight from vagrants to colonels. Ethan remembered Grant's calm, yet commanding presence during a mission briefing. It had been the lieutenant's first mission, and Grant had quietly instructed the young officer to stay close. Ethan had been in awe of Grant's leadership and unshakable resolve, qualities he found sorely lacking in the corporate cowards surrounding him now. As Liam sneered down at him, Ethan's resolve hardened. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. When the FARC rebels opened fire and ambushed their team, chaos erupted. Despite the hail of bullets, they managed to fight off the attackers. But as Staff Sergeant Grant glanced back, he saw the young lieutenant sprawled on the ground, blood pooling around a head wound. He's gone, the medic said grimly, checking for vital signs. Grant knelt beside the body, his face unreadable. Maybe, he said quietly, hoisting the lieutenant into a fireman's carry. But he's still coming home with us. The medic gawked at him. We've got 5 treks through dense forest just to reach the landing site. We'll be lucky to make it out alive as it is. And you're hauling a dead man? Grant shot him a calm but firm look. I'd do the same for you, Jamesy. Stay close in case I need you. The medic sighed but followed orders. Their journey back was grueling, but Grant's determination became the stuff of legend. When the helicopter touched down, the doctor on base approached, his penlight already in hand. The medic repeated his earlier diagnosis. He's gone, he muttered again, shaking his head. But as the doctor shone the penlight into the lieutenant's eyes, the pupils contracted. Care to reconsider your diagnosis? The doctor quipped as he rushed the now conscious lieutenant into the operating room. Grant became a mythic figure in their unit, a man who didn't speak often, but commanded the room whenever he did. His respect for his team was matched only by their reverence for him. During downtime, Grant repaid his gratitude to Ethan's engineering team by teaching them basic combat techniques. "I get it," Grant had said, addressing the team. "Your biggest worry is probably a paper cut or a jammed copier. But in this field, you might find yourself in places you didn't plan on being. And if you ever do run into trouble, you'll want a few tools in your pocket." Ethan had listened carefully, absorbing Grant's lessons. "Let's hope the worst we face is a paper cut," he'd said, earning a chuckle from the seasoned sergeant. But the lessons had stuck, and now they came back to him in vivid clarity. As Ethan leaned into his captor, feigning compliance, Grant's voice echoed in his memory. "When you're pinned, don't panic. Endure the blows, outlast your opponent, and strike when they least expect it." "Give me the phone," Liam demanded, his face close to Ethan's. "You know about Sophia and me. That makes you just another pathetic nerd. Do what we say, and maybe we'll let you keep your little slice of her. She can buy you a robot to keep you company when she's busy with us." Liam smirked, relishing every word. Ethan remained silent, letting Liam think he had the upper hand. "Where is it?" Liam asked, his eyes narrowing as he spotted the phone outline in Ethan's pocket. "Ah, there it is." Reaching out, Liam didn't see it coming. Ethan drove his heel into his captor's shin, following through until it slammed into his Gucci-clad toes. His captor cried out, losing his grip. Ethan flexed his arms and broke free, spinning just as Liam's eyes widened in realization. With practiced precision, Ethan delivered a shoulder turn and a crushing punch directly to Liam's nose. The impact was devastating, a crack echoing through the room as blood spurted from Liam's face. He collapsed instantly, groaning as he hit the ground. Turning to his initial attacker, Ethan saw it was James, sprawled on the floor clutching his leg. "I think you broke my leg," James whimpered. Ethan stomped on James's foot with purpose, eliciting another yelp of pain. "Now it's broken," Ethan growled, stepping toward Liam, who was struggling to his knees, hands clutching his face. Ethan crouched beside him. "Looks like you've got a broken nose, Liam," he whispered coldly. "But I'm not ready to sacrifice for the team just yet." With that, he delivered a sharp blow to Liam's temple, sending him crumpling back to the floor, unconscious. Adrenaline still pumping, Ethan scanned the room for Sophia. He barely had time to react before a sharp blow struck his back, knocking him to one knee. Turning, he saw Sophia wielding a cast-iron frying pan. Her next swing grazed his side as he rose, seizing the weapon from her hands. "Ethan, we can fix this," Sophia said desperately, her voice trembling. "Think about the money we'll lose. I'll end things with Liam, I promise. Just you and me, like it used to be." Ethan rubbed the back of his head, his eyes narrowing as he studied her. Her tone shifted again, pleading now, but he could see through her. She was changing tactics like a chameleon, adapting to save herself. The thought reminded him of the alien from The Thing, morphing to survive. The absurdity of it almost made him laugh. Sophia interpreted his smile as forgiveness and approached him for a hug. But as she drew close, Ethan steadied her with his left hand and, after a pause, delivered a calculated punch to her nose. The crack of bone breaking was unmistakable, and Sophia shrieked, collapsing to the floor. "Hurts, doesn't it?" Ethan said, his voice icy. "Your eyes are watering, you can't breathe, and there's blood everywhere. Pretty effective, isn't it?" Sophia looked up at him, stunned and sobbing, but Ethan was already walking away. "Why did you hit me?" Sophia cried, her voice breaking. "Because I could," Ethan replied coldly. His phone remained recording in his pocket, capturing every moment. Though not every recording would favor him, Ethan believed he had enough evidence to justify his actions. Recalling the advice of Staff Sergeant Grant, he surveyed the room, keeping his focus sharp. Act only when the moment is right, and when you do, act decisively until you're the last one standing. Except for James whimpering in the corner and Sophia pressing a dish towel to her bloodied nose, Ethan was the only one left in motion. He glanced down at her, kneeling beside her to show her how to pinch the bridge of her nose properly. "Hold it here. It'll help slow the bleeding." As the adrenaline drained from his system, Ethan felt exhaustion settle over him. He slumped into the chair across from Sophia, studying her as if trying to piece together a puzzle he'd missed for years. "Where did my wife go?" he asked quietly. "The Sophia I thought I knew is nothing like the woman sitting in front of me. How long have you been lying to me?" Sophia met his gaze, her expression hardening. "Was it worth it?" he pressed. She shook her head but spoke without hesitation. "It could have been, Ethan, if you'd just been willing to support me. We were so close. After Monday, I'd have been on my way to the executive suite. This setback will delay things, but I can fix it." Ethan tilted his head. "So becoming vice president is the dream? And what about us? Deception, lies. Does that all just come with the territory now?" Sophia's voice grew sharp. "Ethan, you're so naive. Liam warned me about this. He said your Boy Scout morality would hold me back, and he was right. I had to break free from your influence if I was ever going to succeed." Ethan's eyes narrowed. "Did he tell you that before or after he seduced you?" Sophia let out a bitter laugh. "You don't have a clue, do you? I tried to play by your rules. I worked hard, stayed on budget, met every deadline. And what did it get me? A few pats on the back and a condescending, 'Well done, girl.' It wasn't until Grace clued me in that I realized how the game is really played. You think hard work and integrity matter? You're living in a fantasy. Leveraging relationships works, Ethan. It's easier, more efficient, and frankly, more enjoyable." Ethan's stomach churned. "So this started before Liam? When? Do you remember the Christmas party a year after I joined Chromerica?" Sophia smirked. "That's when it started, with David. And I've never looked back." Ethan's jaw dropped. "David Sinclair? Your boss? You've been sleeping with David too?" Sophia didn't flinch. "Of course, Ethan. David, Liam, James, whoever can help me move forward. That's the world we live in. If you think you've got it all figured out, let me tell you, David already knows what's happening. The rest of the team does, too. They're covering for us as we speak." Ethan felt a surge of anger, but kept his voice calm. "Covering for you how, exactly?" Sophia leaned back, unbothered. "We told David we were delayed. The team will proceed without us if they have to. But considering all the work we put into charming the procurement managers, I'd say the deal's secure." Ethan took a slow breath, forcing himself to stay collected. "Charming the procurement managers? What does that mean?" Sophia chuckled darkly. "Let's just say we had to get creative. Claire, the lead woman on the selection committee, needed a different touch. It's funny, Liam and I make a great team, even for that." Ethan shook his head in disbelief. "Why risk all this if you were so close to winning?" "It was Liam's idea," Sophia admitted, her tone shifting. "He thought asserting dominance would send a message. I told him to relax. I was going to come home, calm you down, and make it back in time for the flight. But he insisted, and here we are. Now, instead of being the face of the winning team, I'm sitting here with you. It's salvageable, but this mess will set me back." Ethan's voice turned icy. "You think this is salvageable? Do you have any idea what you've done?" Sophia leaned forward, desperation creeping into her voice. "Ethan, listen to me. If you call the authorities, you'll ruin everything. The federal contract, the bonuses, everything. We're talking millions of dollars, Ethan. Think about what we could do with that money. Just send the messages, and we can fix this together. Don't let your pride destroy our future." Ethan stared at her, his expression unreadable. "David's listening, isn't he? Through some transmitter you've got on you. Let me make this clear, Sophia. I don't care about your money, but I do care about fraud. And this looks a lot like fraud on a federal contract. That's a felony." Sophia's phone suddenly rang, its ringtone playing "Hail to the Chief." She answered, putting it on speaker. "David," she said cautiously. "First of all, let me apologize." David's voice boomed through the speaker. "Liam made a serious misstep, and I assure you the board will handle it appropriately." Ethan crossed his arms, his anger simmering just below the surface. "Thanks for the apology, David," he said dryly. "But that doesn't even begin to cover this disaster. It's good to know you, and the board take allegations like assault and fraud seriously, David," Ethan said, his voice heavy with sarcasm. Grave accusations like these deserve more than lip service. David's tone was measured, almost disinterested. Ethan, these are significant issues, yes? Lawyers will earn their keep, but no one wants to disrupt the status quo. Liam and James might do community service. Fines will be paid, but ultimately, you'll end up divorced and with half your current wealth. That's the reality. Is there an or in this scenario, David? Ethan asked pointedly. David chuckled softly. Sophia always said you were the sharp one. I'm increasingly grateful we brought her aboard. But yes, Ethan, there's certainly an or. Chromerica might have supplanted you in your wife's affections, but the response you've faced has been appalling. You've been wronged, and I'd like to propose a resolution. Ethan let the words hang, his silence forcing David to elaborate. You suggested involving law enforcement earlier, but I believe we can resolve this without unnecessary attention. To that end, I've sent a photo to Sophia's phone. Well, not directly, but one of my technicians sent it. It's set to disappear after viewing, so take a look. Sophia handed her phone to Ethan, her expression unreadable. The screen displayed a snapshot of a Bank of Grand Cayman account with a figure containing an almost dizzying string of zeros. When does this come into play? Ethan asked, his voice calm. It's already in play, Ethan, David replied smoothly. You've received an email with account details. It's been a rough day, and emotions can cloud judgment, but remember, banks don't care about feelings. They care about numbers. And this number is a gesture of goodwill, if you will. Ethan's lips twitched into a bitter smile. So Chromerica is covering my divorce costs, too? Naturally, David confirmed. Sophia will take her pension and personal effects. She'll fight for her share, of course, but we're prepared to smooth that out. This is a clean exit, Ethan. You can move on, or expose everything and let the chips fall where they may. Ethan's mind raced. On one hand, he could take the moral high ground, reveal the depths of Chromerica's corruption, and accept the fallout. On the other hand, David had just given him 5 million reasons to walk away quietly. Does Chromerica have medical staff, David? Ethan asked suddenly. Of course, Ethan, David said, intrigued. Why do you ask? You'll want to send a couple of them over here, for Liam, James, and whoever else needs attention, Ethan said, his tone icy. So, we're in agreement? David pressed. Regarding Sophia, Ethan clarified. Yes. Good. Is there anything else, Ethan? Goodbye, David. Ethan ended the call without waiting for a response. He slipped his phone back into his pocket, deactivating the recording app. Sophia, now slumped on the sofa, watched him cautiously. Despite the blood crusted beneath her nose and her darkened, swollen eyes, she managed to summon a weak smile. I knew you'd see things our way, she purred. Maybe we can still be friends, maybe even more. Once this all blows over, of course. She tilted her head flirtatiously, but the effect was grotesque, her battered face undermining her attempt at charm. Ethan stared at her for a moment before shaking his head. Why would I ever want to kiss you, Sophia? He said coldly. He pushed her back onto the sofa with a firm hand. Take whatever you want, but don't be here tomorrow. As he walked toward the door, he paused beside James, who was still groaning on the floor. Still hurting, huh? Ethan asked. Yeah, you idiot, James spat. It's killing me. Maybe this will distract you, Ethan replied, delivering a sharp kick to James's groin. James doubled over, his cries of pain following Ethan out the door. Ethan climbed into his car, unsure of where to go but knowing he couldn't stay. Food and shelter were at the top of his list. He grabbed a burger at a nearby cafe before checking into a Red Roof Inn just outside the city. Exhaustion overtook him, and he fell asleep as soon as his head hit the pillow. When morning came, his body ached from the night's physical confrontations. Despite the soreness, he forced himself out of bed and brewed a weak cup of coffee in the motel's machine. His phone chimed, breaking the stillness. It was a message from the same familiar number. He opened it immediately. Apologies for yesterday. Let's meet at the mall around noon. I'll be waiting for you at the bar. Ethan considered the message for a moment before replying. I'll be there. As he set the phone aside, he opened his laptop. It was time to investigate the offshore account David had so generously funded. Back in college, an economics professor had stressed the importance of having a safety net, an offshore account for emergencies. Ethan had opened an account in the Cayman Islands over a decade ago, humorously naming it the Love You Foundation. Over the years, he diligently deposited into it, growing the balance to around $50,000. Now, it was set to receive a much larger deposit. Ethan logged into the secure banking website and quickly moved the funds from Chromerica's payment into his personal account, leaving $100,000 in the original account to avoid suspicion. With the transfers complete, he felt a grim sense of satisfaction. After showering and changing into fresh clothes, he headed to the mall, arriving just after noon. At the bar, he spotted a well-dressed man waving in his direction. The man appeared to be Ethan's age, suave and polished. Ethan approached cautiously. "I believe you messaged me," Ethan said, taking a seat. The man nodded. "I regret how things unfolded. Finding the right way to tell you wasn't easy. Why don't you start with who you are and your connection to Sophia?" Ethan asked evenly. "I used to be on her team," the man explained. "After 8 years in the Army, I left due to injuries sustained in battle. Chromerica hired me about 6 months ago, and I joined Liam's team 3 months back." I mentioned working for Sophia to a friend, the stranger began, leaning forward slightly. When he asked for her full name, we discovered we had a mutual acquaintance. He asked me to keep an eye on her as a favor. At first, everything seemed fine. I was warmly welcomed by the team, though the reasons weren't clear at the time. Ethan listened intently as the man continued. "About 2 months later, Sophia approached me. She's attractive and persuasive, no doubt about that. But when I asked about her wedding ring, she just smiled and said, 'It's fine with you, isn't it?' I told her it wasn't and made my boundaries clear. That's when things turned sour. Suddenly, I was getting the worst assignments and nothing but grief from Liam." The man paused, shaking his head. "I reached out to our mutual friend and told him about Sophia's advances. He suspected there was more to the story and felt you should know. A few weeks later, Liam sent me a photo of him and Sophia, trying to entice me onto their team with promises of rewards. Let's just say I wasn't interested. I quit yesterday and reached out to you instead." Ethan nodded thoughtfully. "You mentioned our mutual friend. Was it Noah Grant by any chance?" The man's expression softened. "If it weren't for Noah," he admitted, pausing briefly, "let's just say he saved me from a bad situation when I was a rookie lieutenant. I owe him, and I'm guessing you do too." "We both do," Ethan agreed. "So, what's your plan now?" "Honestly, I'm done with this mess," the man replied. "Noah mentioned Baxter Incorporated a while back. I hear they have a different approach to engineering, more focus on the work, less on the politics. I'm thinking of heading there." Ethan chuckled. "Sounds like a good move. I might just follow your lead." The man stood, extending his hand. "Thanks for listening. Good luck, Ethan." They exchanged a firm handshake, and Ethan watched him leave before finishing his drink. Come Monday morning, Ethan was at the airport, checking in for a flight to Costa Rica. Tamarindo seemed like the perfect place to unwind. As he approached security, he spotted a mailbox and pulled an envelope from his pocket. It was addressed to the U.S. Department of Justice in Washington, D.C. Inside was a flash drive containing a recording. He hesitated briefly before dropping it in. Maybe they'll be interested. Who knows? He thought. Perhaps David's legal team isn't as formidable as he claims. With that, he moved through security, feeling a weight lift as he boarded the plane. 9 months later, Ethan sat in his usual spot at a small cafe overlooking the Pacific Ocean. The warm breeze carried the faint scent of salt water as Isabella, the ever-charming waitress, brought him a beer. "Thanks, Isabella," he said, raising the bottle in gratitude. A piece of mail on the table caught his eye. The envelope was plain, with no return address. While Ethan hadn't taken elaborate steps to conceal himself, finding him in this remote Costa Rican town would have required significant resources. His first thought was that David's associates had tracked him down. He left the envelope untouched for 2 days, cautious but certain it wasn't a bomb. Finally, Ethan called out to the cafe owner. "Miguel, do you have a knife?" Miguel sighed, taking the envelope. "Mr. Ethan, you're too careful." Ethan stepped back as Miguel opened the envelope and handed him its contents. Inside were several sheets of paper and a note that read, "Thought you might be interested," followed by a phone number. Ethan recognized the number immediately. Noah, he thought, smiling. I can live with that. Flipping through the papers, he found a newspaper clipping. The headline read, "4 accused of multimillion-dollar procurement fraud," accompanied by a photo of Liam, James, Sophia, and Grace being escorted from the Chromerica building in handcuffs. Ethan let out a small laugh, shaking his head. Maybe David's lawyers aren't as invincible as he thinks. Taking another sip of beer, Ethan let the moment sink in. Isabella approached with a fresh bottle. "Another, Mr. Ethan?" "Sure thing. Thanks, Isabella." As the sun dipped lower on the horizon, painting the ocean in hues of orange and gold, Ethan leaned back in his chair, savoring the peace. He'd lost a lot, but he'd gained something far more valuable: freedom.